Good morning. Comes to Spain, dear colleagues and friends, Lee and Carlos, all of you, thank you very much for your presence in this rainy morning day in Shanghai. I must say something about and express my gratitude to the foundation, the Spanish Foundation for Contemporary Architecture, and express not only the gratitude for this invitation and this opportunity, as well for his effort to support and develop the modern architecture or contemporary architecture, not only in Spain, far beyond the limit of the country, in all around the world. Let me say something about architecture and the process of architecture before show you some of the work of our office. The architecture involved many complex interests, many different worlds: economic, natural world, functional, social aspects, you know, many aspects, many worlds. I must say that whatever one of those worlds you selected, economical or structural, any of them, first is the shape. Without shape, it's impossible to analyze or to study one of those aspects, either to develop architecture. So, shape is first to everything. Without shape, there is not possible any interest regarding the structural or functional aspect. So that's a strong request for architects. We have to propose first a shape and then develop and study this shape. Sometime in the process, we deleted this shape, this initial pre-shape, and start with another one. It's true that we don't like it to express in this way. We would like the architect to express the reality of shape, of form, as a result of a process. So, the most important in our work is this determination of form. Cannot surprise us. That is our first preoccupation. And it cannot surprise us either that in all the schools of architecture in the world, and today, this morning, we are in one of the most important in the world, the student requests an answer to the most insistence of the question: how do we make architecture? All the student in the world asks the architect in practice, what is the limit of the personal decision? What is the limit of the freedom selecting the shape? It's true that the shape is the result of a process, or it's not true. And the architect, when they finish their studies and practice architecture, make decision with more freedom. What is the limit for freedom? How arbitrary must I say to produce good architecture? all those who preceded us responded by means of a certain process, and now some confirm that it's the process itself that makes architecture. It is evident that there are many ways to look. If we take a three-dimensional look at the planet, we could state that Shanghai and Madrid, or China, and Spain are back against back in two walls that do not face each other. But if we map the wall and carry out a very architectural process of drawing on a plane the three-dimensional wall, we realize that Shanghai and Spain are the two extremes indeed, but of a nuke wall, different and away from each other, but precisely in the extreme of the same wall, different but equal. So I ask myself, can therefore this relation have an interest? It is worth the trouble to see from Shanghai the architecture of this small and distant country called Spain. And another question, is there an architecture that we could consider Spanish? Well, I sincerely believe not. There is not a Spanish architecture. In the same way that we can establish the existence of an Italian, Danish, or Chinese architecture. There is not a national style. But do the Spanish architects, not only me, all the Spanish architects, carry out their project in a way that they or we could consider a Spanish way? I sincerely believe so. Unlike other schools and universities abroad, the Spanish architect receive by law an education as an architect and a civil engineer as well. It could seem paradoxical that this apparently restraint that to be an engineer could restrict our freedom in this process of creation of form, but it's just the opposite. Why the opposite? If we consider that the architectural idea is the intellectual support of the shape, to have we can select any shape, but to support this shape, we need an intellectual idea of the shape. But architectural ideas are not architecture. It needs to be developed. It needs to be erected. It needs to be constructed. And in the process of construction, in many occasions, the original idea, the original shape, this ideal form, is transformed by the process. It's transformed by the process of construction. To transform doesn't mean to alter or destroy the idea. It's not a process of depreciate the original idea. And to be a civil engineer at the same time of an architect give us the vision of how the idea must be constructed, how it will be evolved, transformed by this vision of the intellectual vision of the idea and intellectual vision of the process of construction. When a Spanish architect doesn't work in this way, his or her architecture loses much more interest. It's true that when we are speaking of architecture, of an architect that have a whole vision of the whole process, the architect has been along the time really worried about to eliminate the arbitrary decision in the process. Not long ago, the functionalists, as you know, go to the point of trying to make us believe that the shape was the absence of shape. The shape was no shape. Replace it by program, and now there are some architects that say that it's the process who make the shape. It's the computer by itself, or pre-established parametric system. It's not me. It's the process. It's not me. It's the program. It's not me. It's the computer. I'm not responsible for that. Let me say that it's time to remember a little bit the time in which space and shape were considered the same thing. Let me remind you three European examples. The Pantheon in Rome, the most important of the classic building that is still be possible to visit, to admire. In this building, in this incredible section, all of us know that shape, space, and structure are the same thing. The second is also Roman, as is in Istanbul. Hagia Sophia is the scheme evolved, but the concept, shape, space, and form, structure, is the same. It's the same thing. The third is in Córdoba, the city of our foundation, the base of our foundation. But it's Islamic. There are two, structure and shape, as a same consequence. In a way, it's the same, the structure and the space. But this space is different. For the first time, this space is independent of the structure. It's a mathematical space that could be extended with no limit. It's an endless space. And for the first time in history, the structure is independent of this space. One century later, the space became independent of the structure. The architectural shape turned out to be so free, I mean a century ago, that the architect needed to find a process, a new process, because we lose the relation between form and structure. After so many years of the structural one released, the architect looked for a new partner. After the divorce, a new marriage. A bond which will avoid the freedom of what is arbitrary. We become freedom. We get the freedom to separate structure from shape and space, but apparently for the architect, for us, this freedom is excessive. That is to say, the process of the idea. Certainly, sometimes this process turned out to be as arbitrary as chance itself. And perhaps for that reason, or because of the mentioning structural education, the Spanish methods turned out to be a little bit different. I would like to show you 3 examples of 3 late Spanish masters who are very much forgotten. And those old masters, forgotten masters, I think we will express this relation between the Spanish method of create a shape and space at the same time as the structure. The first, I think, is this man, this Eduardo Torroja, civil engineer by education, but an architect of thoughts. And this man, long before others, and previously the World War, so that means in the 30s, the past century, he created spaces like those one. It's a relation between function and shape. You see, it's the frontón recoletos, space to play with racquetball. Is to laminated domes. The biggest one is for the space of sport, and the smallest one for the spectators. And an amazing relation between the space, function, shape, and structure. Torroja established that the functionalism doesn't imply the absence of shape. So that functionalism is not boxes, simple schematic shapes. It is possible to create form, not arbitrary form, and instead of that, form related with the function and the space, and recover the old tradition of Rome with a new vision. This new view, this new proposal, carried out by his student, his pupil Felix Candela, another Spanish master, who take the paraboloided, those shape, those form, those structural, that the structural create the space, and he translated his Candela after the Spanish Civil War, immigrated to Mexico, and he started to develop those forms that he was obviously a master. Previously, the work of Oscar Niemeyer of Eros Saarinen, another true master of shape and curve space in America, South American Niemeyer and North American Saarinen, following the example of this architect and engineer. And the third one is Fernando Higueras, younger, that developed and keep on this track, on this process of create form without the arbitrary process of the shape, connecting again structure and shape for the creation of the space with dome, a marvelous dome erected in this process. I try to explain of how to construct the idea with brick, demonstrating that with cheap materials it's possible to create, not only with concrete, those huge dome and huge spaces. So I prepared this scheme, this diagram, to relate this short introduction about my vision of the process of architecture from the intellectual idea to the determination of shape and later on the construction. And those different walls, I mentioned it at the beginning, we selected 8, but obviously could be more. There are not only those 8. For example, the one, gravity, the oldest of the forces that determine the shape of the building, the shape of the space. Second, geometry, another force. All those 8 are forces, not visible forces, that affect a schematic elemental form. If the form is in the center of this octagonal, all those forces affect the shape. Sometimes if you put your accent on gravity, number 1, is one of the examples we just looked at, the domes of Candela or Torroja. Obviously, it's not only one of those forces that determined the process of the shape, of the form, of the architectural form. In occasion, there are all of those 8, or probably more or less, or only one. The third one is arbitrary, the chance, arbitrary. There are forces that determine the shape in occasion. Obviously, the climate, with gravity, one of the oldest forces that determine the shape of the buildings. Number 5, the program is not in the most popular consideration, actually, but the program is one of the oldest forces that determined the form of the buildings from the old times. What say about the economy? Economy is not very popular in some architectural world, but it's too one of the forces that determine the shape of the buildings. And the number 7, the pre-existence, the surroundings, the history, those that are there before we arrive. And number 8, for the last but not the least, topography, the land, the topography of the earth. I have 8 examples of our work to explain this process, how we made this process in occasion. I think no time for the 8, but I think we have time to have a look at, for example, 6 of those examples. First one is Tower of Hercules. Those towers are in Spain, South Spain. The Strait of Gibraltar is the strait that separates Europe from Africa. It's a mythological site. Gibraltar is this cape and the bay of Algeciras, and at the bottom of the bay is this project. The project is a tower. How we must work in the process of determining the shape of a tower. It's gravity. So that's what I selected the example to, because I think the force that determines the shape of the tower, of this tower, and mostly all the example of tower, or many example of tower, is gravity. Gravity is the most evident force in construction. It's so evident that it's the oldest. And as I mentioned before, this force has given us many of the most beautiful and interesting architectural shapes. It's not difficult to understand. First, the horizontal loads are transmitted in the vertical slab, and then the horizontal loads are transmitted vertically to the earth. It's very simple, as in many, many buildings. But in a tower, we have a new force, wind. And wind is not gravity. It's a new force, very modern. And the wind affects the structure. And the wind is horizontal, not vertical. And this vertical, when receive the force of horizontal loads of wind, create not horizontal strips, create diagonals. As you can see in this square, and the square is the elemental form. We start with very elemental square, and it's affected by this load, and it creates a diagonal. If we keep on this process, we will find a develop of the elevation of the tower, creating this elemental grid of porticos, of slab and column, plus the diagonal. And we create with this the shape and the form that are going to create the internal space of the tower. But even more, there are not only one force in this project, as usual. I have this, I would like to comment with you that there are a strong relation, a new force in this particular site, in this area of Spain. If you see on the bottom, on the right bottom of this shot, is the symbol of dollar. The symbol of dollar is Spanish. It represents the logo of this part of the wall, the column of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar. In one of the efforts of Hercules, the mythological myths, he put both feet in one part of the wall in Africa and in other in Europe, and they create this symbol of the two columns surrounded by a band with a legend who said, non plus ultra, none further beyond this point. The wall finishes for the Roman there, in this point. They never went beyond this point of the Mediterranean. So this strong relation is established a force of connection, a linked with our project of two tower with the two column. And we see thus in this scheme of the process that all those diagonals that had to resist the forces of the strength of the wind created a surprising language, a new language that express with this diagonal the logo of non plus ultra, with the letter that create around the tower the legend non further beyond non plus ultra. So the structure is the expression of the building, is at the same time the protection that provides shade over the facade, and it's continuing up the building with no interior and connection between the two towers, the bridge. The second sample is related with geometry. Is a headquarters of a Spanish company in Madrid. In this area, the project is affected by geometry. The first geometry is the geometry of the city. The city is designed in this part of Madrid with a grid, as in many cities in the world. Again, an architectural again, an architectural simple form, the square. But this grid, as you can see, had been affected, had been adapted by the intersected grid, more arbitrary, of the urban routes that deform the initial square to another different shape, more rhomboid. In consequence, we adapted to the building to these forces of geometry in plan. But the plan, you see the plan adapted, the plan of the building adapted to the geometry of the forces of the city. And in height, we made the same, and we respect the geometry of the surrounding. But so the plan becomes section. And the right angle shape, ideal on plan, become the section 2. In a very simple process of construction, in a very Spanish way, how are we going to construct this idea? The idea that the section, you see, the section is in a square and the plan is in a square. In a very simple way, first, land, the second, 2 columns, third, a beam that connect the 2 columns, and then in the 4 is the square. Again, the square, the same square of the plan suspended in this big beam. This square, this section, those ribs are repeated each 4, you see, 4 meters, exactly the same distance, and the plan floor to floor. And in the 5th point, the program, the space, arises in the interior of this square. The volume are located in this space in more arbitrary way. As you can see there, so this is geometry. That is the main force to determine the space, and the space is at the interior of this square, and I repeat, the square on plan is the same square on section. More. I think the 3rd one is a project whose shape has been determined by the force of arbitrary, the chance. It's in Madrid, and in the center of the city, and in the courtyard, the back courtyard of a 19th century old palace. You can see the palace on the right side, there, up there. The garden, the small garden of the back courtyard of this old palace. We have to extend this old palace. First, the owner cut all the trees of this old garden. It was in very poor condition, and we thought that it was the occasion to make a link or relation between the arbitrary forces of nature on the left side No soy yo, no? I'm sorry. I don't. And the regular architecture of form of the old palace. We made many years ago, this is a project of 15 years ago, we made the decision of take the last tree that has been cut, and we take all in pictures, obviously. And we make a geometric process of this old tree. You can see there on the top left. And with this old tree and a parametric process by the computer, we create an artificial forest that follow the parametric position of the old trees in the old garden, creating an arbitrary nature as opposition or contradictory to the regular Cartesian architectural building of the 19th century. At the interior of this artificial forest, we introduced the new box, and so establishes in the building itself this relation between the artificial wall and the natural wall that are our interest in this particular project. Obviously, they are not column at the interior because it's the structure again that create the form at the form of the interior of this artificial forest. So it's allowed to locate offices on auditorium because there are not restriction, not functional restriction. It's 15 or 16 years old, the project, I think. The fourth one. The five, no? The five. The fifth is affected by one of the oldest forces that determine the shape of the building, program. The hospital are possibly the most forbidding architectural type. Is the reason, is the functional complexity. It's so complicated, a hospital, that usually the experts say that there's no room for architectural interest, it's not the typology to create shape or form or space. In this, I think this hospital we finished already in Madrid, not in Madrid, some distance from Madrid, this is in construction. Give up the opportunity to demonstrate that it's not true. Usually the hospital form proceed in this way. You can see there some example. There is functionalism approach. We usually concentrate the program in block, trying to get closer as it depends on his proximity, surgeon close to X-ray or laboratory, etc. And then circulation are the link between those blocks. This is a hospital. We made it a little bit different, and we began again with a simple form, again the square. We said if the circulation is the masterpiece, is the key point of this functional program, we will use the circulation. We are going to concentrate the force of circulation of this program, put all together, and create like two big highways, one public, one private. Are those two strips that cut the schematic ideal square in three wing and three parts. So it creates two interior spaces that are with all the circulation of the hospital are there. No problem, not only the horizontal, to the vertical as well, circulation is in this space. This is one of those spaces, is the public one. All people are public, not professional, circulate up and down and vertical and horizontally in this space. And this is the space for the professional. All the circulation of the hospital are there, so it's very easy to orientate. It determines the form of this block, of this apparently organic architecture that need to be connected in this functionalist approach that admit another different view, another different vision. What about rooms in the hospital? Just the same. You can see there on the left side the typical floor plan. In this approach, all the rooms are pulled together and then create a circulation between those rooms. It's the corridor. But in fact, it permits the approach, the typical approach of our office. We start again with the simple form. In a soft square, one of the probably most ideal form, circle. If we put the room around the circle, we create an opportunity to improve one of those apparently important determination of the hospital, that is the vision in each plan. So you can see there that the staff can control all the room from this point instead of the corridor, because in this plan the circulation is not the key point. And obviously again, the forces of program pressure the ideal form of the circle till obtain this ovoid shape of the rooms plans. You can see the result. And we place in a very simple way again the spaces of the function program of the hospital and the other part of the program, one on top of the other. This is the interior of this space that creating the circle permit to obtain those extra gift that sometime architecture provide or give at the professional. And this is one of the examples. With all the room around this internal space. See the model? And obviously, we keep the same process. When you have a process, you have to keep on this process till the end, not only from the ideal or intellectual support of the shape, either in construction of or the process of a construction, and obviously in all detail. The facade is the same, it's the square and the circle. The square that determines the functional part of the hospital, and the circle that determines the shape of the space of the room are who create this rhomboid form that shape the exterior facade of the hospital. And demonstrate that the process is a question to keep firm consequence with the first initial decisions. This is from interior of the rooms. And finally, the last one, economy. Or, I don't know if it's the last one, sorry. Is Telefónica headquarters in Madrid, Spain. Telefónica is the biggest Spanish company and create a new headquarters, a campus in in Madrid, but in the suburbs of Madrid, very close to one of the belt highways of the city. I have another picture of the shot, but the economy was so strong determination that we decided to accept economy as the main force that is going to is going to create the shape, the form of the space of this building. The client decided that the square is a present continuously in our work. The square is the most corporative plan. So they demanded us to create, let me go there, you can see those 12 square as the most corporate plan with the central core of vertical circulation at the center of the plan and a square 50 by 50. So this is a strong limit for the freedom for an architect. So we decided, after some different approach and scheme, that is the economy that is going to determine the shape of the building, the force of this project. What is the most economy act of an architect? What is the most economic, or the first economic creation in architecture? A roof. A roof. To create a shelter, the first act is to create a roof. First, a flat, obviously a flat bottom, a flat earth, but second, to have a roof over this space and create this shelter, very elemental shelter. So Telefónica is that. We accept economy as the force. What is the most economy? A roof. And what we create? A roof. And between the earth and the roof, all those building, all those corporative square demanded by the client, we will place it. What is the most simple way to create spaces on transition between private and public? With only three elements to create a square open. As you can see, the four corners are three elements. Those create a space in between. Interior is an exterior, is not public, is not private, with only three elements, only three buildings that create this space connecting the exterior wall with the interior wall of the campus. Some picture that. This is one of those spaces, one space of connection, a space of relation of the people who work there and the people who come to visit Telefónica headquarters, with a roof and three buildings. That's all. And to more private space and the interior of the campus, we need four. We need as in a square to create the limits because it's almost totally private. So there are four of those corner that create those four group of buildings that create the interior with the most elemental approach, the internal space of the campuses. Those buildings that are alive between the earth and the ceiling, between the bottom and the top, are related. You see there the roof is red and the bottom is black, are related with the roof, either with the bottom, closing to the exterior or admitting people going underneath the building to the interior of the spaces. You can see one of the examples of the building belongs to the roof, and people walk through the space below the building to access the interior of the complex, like this. Or are buildings related with the earth, with the bottom, with the soil, and close the relation of the internal spaces with the external spaces. And finally, facade, how to keep this concept along all the process of design, of creation of form. What is the most elemental form? Just a flat shape, just a flat screen of glass. To protect of the sun, we use double screen, and we use double screen of glass. It depends on the orientation, as usual. But it's apparently the main problem with economy, when you design it with economy as main force, is the worry of the concern of the architect that to get a very bored form, a very banal form, and how to transform those banal form in the cheapest way. What is the most free energy in the world? The sun is free. How to create, how to transform this elemental facade with just sun, with no cost, using the sun, as in history and with the old time, with the example of the master of the past. In the column of Greece and Rome, we return at the beginning of this pitch, they transform with just some strip the columns, with a lesson of architecture that with the less we can get, the more. And with no cost, just the sun, it transforms the facade with no ornament, just with that along the day. We recovered this very old lesson of the master, and using the ribs that connect both screen of glass in Telefonica building, we create this opportunity of the opportunity of the sun to project shade over the screen at the interior, and along the day transform the appearance of the elevation, and the whole complex is affected by this surprisingly chain and vibration with sun, with the Spanish sun. You can see there. And in 2 minutes to finish, because it's included topography. Topography in this building in an old project started by my father. It's a building with more than 35 or 40 years. But it's a good example of how topography could determine the shape of the building. It's in a small cliff in Madrid, in the central avenue of Madrid, and you can see that there's the slope, this small slope. Usually, when a building is in a slope, and the forces of topography determine the shape of the building in two ways, or adapted to this line of topography and are building that belong to the natural wall with form like curves, or adapted, very integrated in the slope, or in just the opposite, confront a contrast of buildings that are brutally like a flat roof on the previous example, situated over the slope. Here in this building we use, let me see, what is this? we use the two approach of the that permit the topographic forces in the determinational form. You can see there the lines that follow the curves, the lines of the topography, and in front a platform, a podium is just a flat plan that intersect, I could see the section, the slope, and in top the small tower. There the tower, again the square, this typical corporative plan where the core is extracted from the wall of the geometry to in direction at the slope to connect this core with the topography of the slope, with the lines, and create an interesting plan with the core external of this space, this square, this again an elemental form, freedom of connection, column, and services. You can see there the building is suspended from the core. There are no columns because all the structure is working on traction, not compression. And there you can see the line of the slope and this elemental flat plan in form. The elevation follows exactly the same process of affected by topography, creating this building. You can see there very easily the slope, the plan, and the tower flying over this two elemental topography action. And that's all. I hope that it could interested you in the different process in our office. Work with different forces and in project. And thank you very much again for the invitation. Thank you very much for your attention and your presence here. Thank you. Bye.
I'm not going to giving very much comments on his works, but I want to instead ask a question because I translate the book Spain Builds, and the book deals with the modern heritage of Spanish architecture, starting with the crash down of Franco policy and the governance. So I think maybe your father is one of the most important architects for the first generation of Spanish modernists. So how they look at the heritage of modernism, and also how are you influenced by him and also that generation, and how do you look at their works in your mind? That's my question I want to pose to you.
Thank you. Well, I think I mentioned in the speech that the most important, perhaps, of this generation that Carlos mentioned as well, after the Spanish Civil War, is the generation that bring the modernism to Spain. But thanks to a new sort, a new kind of a school of architecture, a school of architecture, technical school. And my father and the friend, because those times was very few architects and all of them was our friends, so that the most important is this social aspect. And they insist many, many times that is this social and technical relation that allow them to improve the condition of life in Spain. So it's not a question of Beaux-Arts, school, wasting time is the ideal style is the neo-Baroque or the new neoclassic. If a kind of architect formed to develop a new kind of architecture focused to improve the social condition of a country in very poor situation after a terrible war. So I think that's the most important, and by sure the aspect that most, or they feel, I said they because I'm sure I'm speaking in the name of all of them, this generation, more proud about their role as architect in Spain. How it influenced us. I think I make it some statement in the speech. By this technical formation that prepare us to respond the demand of a society. The society change. Its society is different, and the time is different, but the architect has to be prepared to respond to those necessities.
It's only I would like to add that this generation, the Rafael's father generation, it was really like a miracle, because Spain had been absolutely close to the new tendencies all over the world. There was very, very few information about modern architecture in Spain, and this generation was educated in the social housing projects, which is something what they did were very, very humble housing, very, very humble housing for very, very poor people. So, and from this starting point, they could build, I think, one of the best versions of a modern movement in Europe in the 1950s and the 1960s, So let me ask Rafael, because I think you have created, you have your own way, absolutely very different to the one of your father. The conditions of the country are very different. You have an excellent architecture, but your starting point is different, and I think you have your own way different to that of your father. Is it like this?
Thank you. I think so, or I hope so, but let me repeat the statement. It's not an Spanish architecture, that is style or conditions, but it's a way to make architecture that I think is Spanish. I can recognize this when I watch my work or the work of my generation. Obviously it's different because I selected those forces and others selected others, interest forces, other world, and each one has their own process, their own method to develop that. Not very different, but the point in common is that all the time we are moving from the intellectual idea to the shape. At the same time, we are moving at the same time in parallel from the idea to the construction. On plans, a wall is a line, but a line in the real wall is like this, the thickness. So it's changed. In many occasions, we see a project that is really attractive in plans, in drawings, and when we watch it on reality, is really poor. And sometimes it's the opposite. But I think this education of the architect, the Spanish architect, personally my education to think how to construct, how is the structure, how are we going to put all together is a method. And all the Spanish architecture probably is not extravagant, with no example spectacular, but is this in the trend of this origin of tradition of social architecture and techniques to help the country.
Well, I totally agree with Rafael that he's saying that there's not either a Spanish architecture or Chinese architecture today in style, but there is something that rooted in the social and cultural condition now here. So we can see that even foreign architects, when he come to China to do some projects, there are some impact on his works from the local techniques and climates, and or maybe the people who built it. So there, from the whole process of spatial production, there's something we feel is Chinese, but not in a style. So I totally agree with him. Also, in China today, there is also a very strong, I think, a trend for the architects to rethink about. During the past 10 years, we have been building a lot of housing, but it's not housing for the poor people, for the real social, bad condition people. So now we're thinking about building the social, something could be termed as social housing, and we believe that our great architect, always like Le Corbusier in the history, and many good contemporary architects are dealing with that social housing, because it's not only a creation form, but also it's a creation form related with the social issues and social conditions in the society. That is very important for a great architect, I think. So that is something I can see from contemporary Spanish architects' works as well. So that's why my feeling about the contemporary situation. And also we have the similar approaches that are developed in China these recent 2 or 3 years. There's a lot of discussion and debate about how the good architects should deal with the social issues rather than just create expensive, delicate houses for the most rich people. That's I think similar approaches we can find in Spain.
I mentioned the speech with this scheme of the same wall, the extreme in Spain and China, in these two extreme. We have been countries, both, isolated for a long period of time, isolated of the world, China and Spain. This generation we are talking about, my father's generation, they never worked abroad. They all work is in Spain. They never went out. And the same way, no foreigner architects worked on Spain in those times. There are no relation. There are not connection. But now it's different. I'm working abroad. There are many architects from around the world working in Spain. If we are able to improve each other, sharing this different education for a best architecture in different countries, in China or in Spain, for example, for those following with this sample, I think it's the tax of this generation, completely different, because there are no reference how to act. Can a Spanish architect work out of Spain and with no control, with no involvement in the construction process? Is completed a part of our tradition. I think it's your tradition as well. How to get the best of the example and other education of the other school of architecture in the world to improve China, I think is the tax of this generation, exactly the same in Spain, in different social conditions, but I think it's what is the accent and profile of this generation. What do you think about?
I think Professor Lee have made a very good definition of what's happening now. There's not national architecture, but local conditions, social, economic, cultural conditions that affect the architecture. And so I would like to make a question to Rafael now, because in Spain and in Europe we are living now a very, very serious economic crisis, the biggest our generation has ever lived. We are not sure about what's going to be our future and our conditions, social and economic conditions in the future. So my question for Rafael is, how do you think that this crisis is going to affect the Spanish architecture? Can we have a look of if you know about a change in, I don't know, if in programs, if in quality, if in kind of buildings, if in shapes? Can you imagine something about the future of Spanish architecture after the crisis?
Well, I think we have to come back or move our vision again to this example of social approach of the architect. Space, form, shape is really attractive. All of us know what it doesn't mean, but it's not the most relevant for social for societies in some way. So Spain have a good architect because all the building has to be designed by law by an architect, and this include all the residential. But now we has moved from the top social houses quality to a very, very poor. I mean, in average, obviously there are very good examples and very poor, no? But in those times. No? But I think the architect has to come back to this aspect to help the society. I insist in the good school, in not as just one example. One of the things my father was most proud of himself was the plan for small schools in Andalusia, in the south of Spain. It's a plan to develop hundreds, thousands of small schools in most of the small village, etc. It repeats one model. Apparently it's not very attractive for a young architect. I designed one very simple school, and that's all. But I say, no, that's all not. I repeat this small house in more than 10,000 schools in Andalusia. Most of the children that learn how to read and speak and write in Andalusia now made that in one of my schools. And he said it's probably the most important thing I do in architecture. This is so different approach. This is so different. I think not totally, because socially the conditions are really different, but we have to, in Spain, to move our look of interest, our field of interest to those especially. And in China, I think it's very similar. No? I think when the country is in this incredible, huge construction process, there is very difficult to avoid mistake, especially in big construction and social. But perhaps the opportunity to work together with those in those aspects. No?
Maybe we give some chances for the audience. 如果你们现在有什么问题的话，可以问一下。你到前面来吧，到这里来，我给你拿着。Because they have to record everything, so it's better to 拿着这个。
录音。Firstly, I want to thank Professor Rafael for the excellent speech, and your work is very inspiring. However, my question is more related to how you work. I mean, judging from the way you the way you present explain your project, it seems that you can find an idea, a concept very easily and develop it step by step. But however, when I do a design, I'm always confused with dozens of ideas, and I need to compare all of them to find the best one and then develop it. I mean, do you have similar confusion, or you design in a very easy and relaxed way? Thank you.
Very good question. I have two sons. One of them is Madrid School of Architecture. And at home, he made this kind of question. Say, Father, tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. In fact, when you design, your process is arbitrary. It's not true what you try to convince us at the school. When they say you, means all architects. No? All architects try to present their work as an evident result of a process. This is the process. I have a process. I'm starting simple idea, simple form, and thanks to my personal process, I finish in this excellent masterpiece. I say, it's true or not? Because my son said, I suspect that it is not true. I suspect that there are many arbitrary decisions along the process. And those arbitrary decisions are permitted to the old architect. No one is going to complain, say, oh, this is arbitrary. But at the school, all the time, the teacher and say, what is the reason? Why you did that? What is this, for what, and for what? What's happened? What at the school we have to be all the time saying, why? I do this because I feel like this, no? Okay, this is the question all around the world, in all of the schools of architecture in the world. I said, how percentage of freedom, of personal arbitrary decision may I take in a project? This is a very difficult question, believe me, very difficult. It exists. It's not true that everything is a process. Even this approach to say, okay, it's not my personal approach, it's not my mood, it's a process, it's function, it's the program that provides the form. It's not me, it's the program. Now what said, it's not me, it's the computer. I introduce all the item and the form is like that. It's not true. It's obviously that it's a part of arbitrary in the process, but not at the beginning. At the school it's impossible to start in this point, because if not you create no sense form. You have to keep passing and follow your teacher, developing a very strict process. This is a profession that you will start to create something at the 40 years old. So this is the beginning. So be patient, follow the instruction, and probably in the future I will assist on a speech and you will explain how arbitrary is your work, but not now.
Okay, maybe 你要说回到这里。拿个这个。
Thank you, Professor Rafael. Can I get more details? Because you know, some architects they present, I mean, those rough models. I mean, they align the models in a line and put them on the first page of their book, and saying this. I mean, it shows their struggle to some extent. And do you, I mean, in the first step, do you just focus on one concept, or you also struggle between different concepts and try to discover their potentials and before you follow one?
I think maybe he can come to you after the presentation, and then maybe
你等一下结束了以后来跟他讨论一下这个问题。现在还有再有问一个问题，好不好？还有谁想问一个问题？没有问题啊。Okay, maybe I say something to wrap up, and then we can. Or you wanna? Okay. Thanks. I think to everybody. Now this is a wonderful morning. Although it's raining very heavily, but we feel the spirit of architecture and also architecture creation here. So I'm very happy to host this conference. And also before we end, I want to say something about the school and our collaboration. You know that we have been, from the School of Architecture, we have been collaborating with many different architecture schools in Spain. You probably know that Spain is one of the most important country today, contributing a lot to contemporary worldwide architectural culture. And so I love personally the Spanish culture a lot, so I've been working with Spanish friends on this. And recently the university is going to set up a program called Sino-Spanish Campus, and I'm responsible and going to be the academic director of it's initiated by Tongji University and UPM and UPC, one in Madrid and one in Barcelona. But fortunately, we also have other partners. We have UEM, we have Seville. I definitely want to bring those partners into the program, and not for architecture, but for also other disciplines like civil engineering. So that's one of the missions that we're looking at, and it's also a good chance to look at to communicate more with Spanish colleagues, our Spanish colleagues and partner universities in the future. So let's take this chance proud to thank those two professors again at the end, and thanks to them. And we hope that they can come to us more often and give us more thoughts and experience about their practice and also teaching. Thank you very much. You want to say something?
Thank you very much for your
Pleasure. Alice.